All right. So in today's webinar, what we're gonna basically cover is the problem, right? So the common issues we're seeing with regards to QA in startups, in early stage teams, and how TestChimp's AI agentic system works and how it actually solves the problem. And then we're gonna explore a bit into how this solution fits in a typical CI/CD setup. And of course, we're going to be demoing all of these. So it's going to be pretty hands-on. It's going to be pretty cool to watch. And as we go along, I would definitely encourage you guys to drop a message in the chat if you would like to ask any questions, and we will definitely walk through them in our Q&A sessions, right? So without further ado, um, Nuwan, could you tell us about yourself, the cool stuff you've been working on, the journey that brought you here to founding TestChimp, and how things have gone for you these past few years? How's it been,
Awesome.
Nuwan?
Cool. So thanks a lot, Tuan, for inviting for the webinar. It's fun to always have a chat.
Pleasure.
So about myself, so I for the last 8 years I was working with Google, mostly with Google Pay, and it was mostly on my last role was leading the observability strategy for the payment apps org, which consists of GPay, wallet, and web payments. And before that, I was doing involved in various teams like growth team, server infrastructure team, and so on in Google Pay. And this sort of led to TestChimp as well, because it being so the thing with fintech products is that you have tons of features, usually in fintech products, and with quite a lot of churn in
Yep.
features. So
Yeah.
every time we build something and push it out, there's always that sort of scare around, like, did we break something else, or like it's just that there's so much testing that needs to be done. It almost always overwhelms our teams. So
Yeah.
it was around time when LLMs was also picking up, and so the idea was basically, can we utilize LLMs to to see how we can help out in the QA process, because there's so much uh, things that happens in the QA that needs to be done on QA space, like uh, from functionality testing to like visual glitches, responsiveness checks, security checks, and so on. Any help is
Absolutely.
useful. So yeah, so that led to building TestChimp.
That is such an interesting story. So, like, especially with the experience throughout the years in open telemetry, and that being combined with the problems you've seen with QA as well, like, and that's a pretty strong background, and you've seen it all. So we're so fortunate that we have all of that experience, that goes into building a test chip then. So that is great. And as for myself, I'm the founder and CEO of DevOps 94. We help startups and scale ups, yeah, grow with DevOps, right? So we do DevOps as a subscription, where and before that, like, we come to your startup and we basically set up your infrastructure, we set up security and CI/CD, and then of course you can go with DevOps 94 as a subscription model. That's basically what we do. And then I think you basically touched on what exactly inspired the build of TestChimp. So, like you said, right, the the advent of AI, especially the large language models, opened up the huge possibility of being context aware, of solving these, especially the UI UX part of things, right? Since they are aware of the errors, and they are able to, pinpoint us in the right direction when it comes to the QA. Fantastic. So let us now move to, okay. So with TestChimp, Nuwan, what when it comes to explorative agentic testing, right? How does a typical test look like, and what exactly can the developers learn from a typical TestChimp explorative session?
Yeah. So when it comes to testing, I think as a developer myself, there's a bit of a misunderstanding about like what testing usually means. From what we've
Yeah,
had discussions as well, where people usually assume test scripts to be the end solution for tests. You'd have like a bunch of playwright scripts, and they would say like, okay, we
yeah,
have coverage, and that's about it. Um, but there's a lot of additional things that you need to check, which is included in QA that usually gets overlooked. As a quick example, think about you
hmm,
quite often see like a site, you shrink the site, and then all of a sudden buttons start to overlap, and then text
oh
go
yeah,
and the text overflows the button width and so on. So there's a whole bunch of those visual glitches that happen, and you can't effectively write a playwright script to catch those. So, well, that's one area where like it's really hard to write the scripts on in those kind of scenarios. Um,
got it.
and so
And one,
usually,
that's exactly where, sorry for jumping in, like that's exactly like where the AI shines, right? Because it's aware of
yeah.
like the context both visually and through like your console logs as well, right? Both combined to make a very powerful solution.
Yeah, so that's one aspect of it. So that is where, so usually the solution up until now is like some person would manually, a human would go and check it, because you need to like look at the screen, and make the judgment. Like as an example, like if you have a placeholder where an image should appear, a playwright script would probably see if there's a URL for that image, but you would need a person to actually look at the screen and see whether that image is actually loading. So, for instance, if the image is not present in that URL, the playwright script would still pass because it did have a validation assertion saying
Yeah.
that URL is there, but you need a human to actually look at it. But with LLMs, what happens is that LLMs has the ability to sort of mimic human behavior in a way, and look at the screen,
Hmm.
so to speak. So that's where we see AI being quite powerful. And the second aspect is the other misconception around like scripting is that scripting is basically a rigid set of steps that you ask it to follow, and so you kind of need to know the bugs beforehand to write the script so that it can check
Yes.
that bug is not present. So you have to design the scenario, and then you write a script for that. And all what the script does is guarding your system for breakages of that scenario, exact set of steps. Um, and what exploratory testing does is basically it's sort of like creative exploration of your app. So it's basically without a rigid guide, just go ahead and explore on your own kind of a idea. So that's again where AI sort of shines, because AI has the creativity to think on its own, and LLMs, to be more specific, has the ability to like think on its own and guide itself. So how we see AI being useful is in utilizing that creativity, and like open-ended exploration, and checking for those various glitches that you would typically require a manual tester to test, um, instead of trying to replace scripting with agentic runs, so, which is a direction that we're seeing um, with
Hmm.
many other companies. But the downside of that is, I think that's we can talk about it later on as well. But basically,
Yeah.
people would love to say like, oh, here's the English description of the test, and now the agent goes and tests and says whether it was working or not. But the downside is, you cannot be 100% certain of what it says, because LLMs by definition are non-deterministic. So if it says like, hey, I
Yes.
tested it this flow and it works fine, you would always have the doubt whether was it actually working. And the
Yeah.
second is that it's expensive and slow, because during every single step you would have to do inference, um, which is gonna cost. And then also it is slow compared to like a
Yep.
script where you just do these steps quite rapidly. So I think where I see like AI sort of fitting in the QA workflow is not necessarily replacing the scripted work, but basically taking out the workload of the portion that was not covered by scripting, like doing the manual checks and doing explorations creatively, which were usually done manually.
Yeah, exactly right. Because like the scripting part is definitely, like we definitely need some deterministic tests to validate the core, functionality and the core usability of the application. That, and then with usability being like currently widely done as a manual task, right? You would need a dedicated person, and just imagine the hours that it takes per week, right? And imagine that scale across weeks, I mean, scale across months and years. And if you can get that even with a reasonably, good level of accuracy, I mean, and like you said, right, the LLMs may not always give you a 100%, correct answer, but these models are evolving, right? They're getting better every single day almost now, it seems. So
Yeah,
I think the improvements are only going to curve upwards, right, Nuwan? Like we can
yeah,
expect this to be more reliable as we go on, I guess, right?
yeah, and I think even if you like um, forget about the reliability and like accuracy, the one of the problems like QA domain is that when you're trying to approach with AI is that people in QA you need certainty that if you're saying a bug is not there, it has to be not there. The cost of it saying a bug is there, a bug is not there, but the bug is actually there is quite high, as opposed to,
Yes.
let's say it says, hey, here's a bunch of bugs, and some of those turn out to be not bugs. It just hallucinated. That's not a big cost, in the sense that you would like go through the bugs and see, okay, it's not a bug, so then you can just ignore that. So it's basically like balancing between false positive versus false negatives. So so false negatives are costly. So that's where we see like, scripts should guard those business functionalities, because you have that
Yes.
deterministic accuracy. And I think
Exactly.
um, because it's kind of a feature of AI to be like creative and non-deterministic. So um,
Hmm.
if you try to like bring in determinism, I guess we might sort of lose the other side a bit, unless like foundation models somehow become like creative and deterministic. And as you said, like, whatever improvements that happens at the foundation model layer, we are gonna benefit by including in the workflows.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. So looks like, things are only going to improve. And as people, find a way to combine these two approaches and change the way they do things, it's an exciting time. AI has changed so many things. Like in our industry itself, we've seen like DevOps, and now with, QA, especially in this problem, right? Usability testing. The impact is just, I think we're just getting started with what we can do with this. So it's truly exciting. See how we can take this. Awesome. So for the next part of our webinar, I guess, Nuwan, we can start playing around, right? And see how this actually works under the hood.
Yep, sure. I think you'll need to like
Awesome. Let me
if only one
stop
person can
sharing.
share. By the way,
Yeah.
are you recording? All right.
Yeah.
Um,
So, could you like give us a high level like bullet point of what we're gonna do? So, I guess what we're gonna do is show the explorative capabilities of the agent, right? How it actually looks at your product and gives you a report of the bugs. Could you walk us through before you like give us like a high level understanding before we start with this demo?
sure. Yeah. So as I
Yeah.
mentioned, so what testing with testing what we built is what we call an exploratory test agent, as opposed to a scripting generator, which is the other approach that a lot of folks are taking. So with exploratory agents, what happens is you simply give a URL, your web app URL, and ask it to like go ahead and explore. Um, so this is where you'd land on the explorations page in an app, and
Oh,
you can.
okay. So, so,
So
so no one, it's as simple as telling someone like, hey, here's the URL, just go around the URL and let me know what you think. It's basically
exactly, yeah. So we
that,
wanted to
but
like
in an AI agent. Okay.
Yeah, so we wanted to sort of make the experience as close to hiring a manual tester, and what
Yeah.
is like you would tell them, hey, here's the web app, tell me what you find, and we wanted to mimic
Mm.
that as closely as possible. So when you start an exploration, you can ask it to like autonomously explore. There's another option of like giving a playwright script like do like a guided tour.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, cool. So you have that flexibility. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So, and then you can give a URL to test. Wait a second. Uh,
I mean, it's from what I can see, like it's so intuitive, and like the time for adoption for teams is literally going to be hours from what I can see.
yeah, it takes like 10 to 15 minutes to run a scenario. So you can give the
Yeah.
login details. So you give the URL, the login details of a test account. If you have any specific
Hmm.
areas that you wanted to focus on, you give that as well. Um, and over here, so I'll talk a little bit about this portion. So um, while it walks through, it will basically analyze four different bug sources. It will look at the DOM structure, the console logs, the API requests and responses that occur, as well as the screenshots. So every time it comes across a new screen, it'll take a screenshot and analyze that as well for bugs. And then across multiple viewports, if you're doing screenshot analysis, it'll you can select the various different viewports that you're interested
Oh
in,
wow,
and
this is really interesting. So
yeah, because I
so from
think
here, basically, like it's not only doing it visually, but also it gets the context from your logs. I mean, from the network itself, right? To see if there are any like four double zeros, like if you're missing any files. All of that context is captured by the agent. That's pretty powerful.
yeah, so there's various security bugs that occur that we can catch by analyzing the API requests, for instance, or maybe you're sending
Yep.
credentials, free text on the headers and stuff like that. And then you'll give
Fantastic.
some limits on like how many steps your journeys need to take and so on. There's some advanced settings around like pre journey scripts and post journey scripts for like setup and tear down kind of thing. And then you just press start exploration. And so before the webinar, I actually did a run a session because it takes like 10 to 15 minutes for the run to work.
Exactly.
So this is what it looks like. So it will go to the URL that you gave, and you can see it's now on the desktop viewport, and it does a few things. One is, as I mentioned, it catches bugs and report to you. But it also, when you look at a screen, what if you think about a manual tester or like a QA engineer, what they would do is like they would look at the screen, and then by looking at the screen and the elements that is present, they will come up with like these are the different things that I need to test on this page.
Yep.
So you can see
Hmm.
it's a login screen, so you'd know to like have a scenario for successful sign in with what if I don't enter the details? Is it working? Invalid emails, invalid passwords, and
Got
so
it.
on. So there are various scenarios, and those are like very detailed things that you need to do. Like it's fairly mundane. These are not like
Hmm.
complex business logic stuff, but these are fairly mundane stuff that is dragging down a lot of QA teams. So the objective is basically
Got it.
to not to replace the QA team, but basically your QA team can then focus on the more complex stuff, and this mundane stuff can be taken care of by
Exactly.
the AI.
Fantastic. And Nuwan, one question for you over here. Like, so these, so like it will basically at this point, right? So we have the form. It is going to look at the elements. It is going to look at the tabs, and then basically come up with a bunch of like test scenarios that are catered to this specific scenario, right? And this is also identified by the AI agent. That's
Yeah.
very interesting, right? So,
So while it walks through, it will identify the scenarios, and then it will write the scenario steps and the scripts as well. So if you go into that particular scenario,
oh
that's
wow,
so this is what it captures, what the expected behavior is, and what are the test steps. And it has also written a test script that you can see over here. So it has written the script for you for that test case and for the other test cases as well. So
oh wow,
right off the bat, you would get all of those for each of those test scenarios in the single exploration. You would get all of those test scripts written. So it writes the scripts, but of course you need to like go ahead and verify whether everything is in as you would expect.
fantastic, fantastic. Not only does it help you like identify the scenarios, but it actually gives you those scripts so you can you know use it in a codified way if you need it, right? So that is so awesome,
Yeah.
the
So you
flexibility.
can basically export them however you want. So for instance, you can export them as a playwright script, and over here you have the script so that you can like put it in your CI/CD pipelines and run, in
Hmm.
your GitHub repository. You can just put them. So it's basically getting all of those test scenarios generated and ready for you. But yeah,
Fantastic.
so that's sort of like helping out on the scripting side, but the main focus is around um, what the scripts cannot do, which is basically like creatively going ahead and looking at the screens and then coming up with issues. So you can see that
All
because
right.
we picked different viewports, so you can see it resizes the viewport to mobile, um, and now it looks at that screen and then captures. It can even like do suggestions, and I think that's a fairly powerful thing in that like it's not bugs per se,
Yes.
but it's like it's equivalent to a human just looking at the screen and saying like, "Dude, this looks ugly" or whatever. Sometimes it says
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
the
Exactly.
UI it looks fairly old, um, and I think that's kind of
And
useful.
this is so interesting, right? Because something that might have worked, like the view that could work on a laptop, and since you're now testing it on the mobile, it may be different, right? It may not scale properly. So doing all of these views simultaneously, that is so powerful. And
Yeah, so actually,
yeah,
to give a quick example, so here's another, so it visited another page over here, dashboard kind of thing. And it, again, so every time it comes across a screen, it would like resize to different viewports that you selected and then analyze. So you can see in here, it has like, broken views. And it has
yep,
an AI can easily look at the screen and say like, hey, there's like elements that are like partially cut off. So you can see it has identified, the elements are partially cut off, so it's not responsive enough, and it will roughly show where exactly the issue is happening. Um, so
wow,
yeah, so it's basically like it'll look at the screen and then say, okay, these things are not good. It's like, or you can see that the calendar uses a light beige background with slightly darker beige
Mm,
text, which is low contrast. So you can see that these are not
exactly.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it will show, okay, here's where it's happening, and so you can immediately action on them. So these kind of things.
Awesome. And I like the way like you have categorized these bugs because on the responsiveness, the usability, and the accessibility, so you can address them as such, right? I mean, that is quite powerful in itself. Pretty good job with this, Noah. Awesome.
Thanks. So if you think about like those bugs,
Yeah.
so those are the kind of bugs that a lot of folks forget about, especially developers when they think of testing. They think like, because we are developers who our outputs are also code, so we love to have everything in code. Um, but think about
Yeah.
like having a script identifying this. It's just not possible, right? So whether
Exactly.
elements are not visible, or think about things like an error message comes. Can the user understand this error message? And you'd often see sites
Yes.
where an error message says an error occurred, um, and it's useless. It doesn't give any context about
Yep.
like what happened. Or sometimes you see like entire stack traces coming in error messages. Um, those are all like points
Yep.
where you lose marks points with the user, because the user is like, what the hell is happening? This whole stack trace is being pushed.
Yeah, exactly. And because like in 2025, right, the attention span of like most people, are like so low, and the like it's unforgiving, right? Like you
Yeah,
make one mistake on the usability, and there's a very high chance that nobody returns because
yeah.
there's so many products out there. Everybody's competing for your attention, and a few seconds of user experience glitch it really makes a big impact, right? So identifying them earlier is,
As an example, so
I mean, non-negotiable.
yeah, so like last like few weeks ago, I think. I was using Wix for another project, and in Wix they had this
Okay.
banners where all of their things were appearing in template strings and not the actual strings.
Okay.
Um, and
Oh wow.
the test scripts would have passed because something is appearing, but it needs like a human tester or an LLM that looks at the screen to like say, hey, these are garbage things that you're showing. So that's where I think
Exactly.
we want
Exactly.
to focus our efforts on. And so basically so this is
Beautiful.
an example of an exploration, and what it does is, while it goes through, it makes a mind map understanding about your product. Because um, so so think of like Cursor, for instance. So why Cursor is great for like development is because it has the full context about your source code. It knows like this file is there, this other
Absolutely.
file is there, which does this thing, and so on. But for QA workflows, what you need is the equivalent runtime behavior context, in terms of like how does your app work during runtime. So it's
Yep.
basically what different screens are there and what different elements are there in each of those screens. So you
Absolutely.
mentioned that in the login page you would have like these elements, and then that would be the input that a QA engineer would take into saying like, okay, so there's a sign-in form, and then there's a notification region. So what are the different things that I need to do to test this page? So all of that, we basically build a mind map that you can see over here, that has understood the different pages and what are the different sections in it, and even down to individual elements. So this is the the knowledge map essentially that testing builds, with an exploration, and you can see the different bugs that it found on each page, so you can go ahead and address them. So this is
Yep. That
basically
is.
what would power future exploration. So instead of so this is where I said like we try to mimic a QA engineer. So if you hire a QA engineer,
Mm-hmm.
they would have a knowledge about your product, like if unlike a play.mcp, you give a prompt, it will go through that. But a QA engineer would know, okay, this my web app has these different screens, and if you do a change over here, it will impact things over there, and so on. So all of that context is what we try to capture in the AI with this mind map, essentially.
Yeah, fantastic. Right. So with this context, I guess like your agent would not have to, like figure out all the like pages every single time. It has the context, and it like I think you have an overlay here, right? When you click, it shows you the bugs on each page,
Yeah,
which was quite powerful. Like,
yeah. So you can see like
yeah,
where
there we go. So like,
where are the bigger portions of bugs happening, and so on. So for instance, with this one exploration, it has identified these two pages, but it has identified these pages exist, but it hasn't explored yet. But you can then go ahead and ask it to like explore the screen and so on. So when you say that, the agent already knows how to get to the my availability screen. So when you say now go ahead and test my availability screen, it will know,
yep,
okay, start from the login page and do the logins and so on, and then come to the my availability page and then test it, which is very similar to how the difference between a QA engineer versus someone who hasn't seen your web app. So that's what we want,
exactly.
essentially.
Fantastic. I mean, context is power in 2025. So
Yeah,
anything
I
that
think
you can do to
that's
optimize it so that,
100%. Yeah, I mean, if you look at like
yeah,
a lot of what we call AI wrappers, Cursor, for instance, why they're like I used to use ChatGPT for like coding, but you every now and then you had like jump from your ID to ChatGPT and you give it some example code, but it doesn't have the full context of your code base, so it'll give things that are not ideal. But with Cursor, what happens like it has the full context of their source code, so it gives that magical sort of experience, and that's what we aspire to
exactly.
uh, implement in the QA space, essentially. Like, how do we capture as much runtime context as possible and make it available to an AI that can then reason on top of that?
That is fantastic. Yeah, and you've been doing a pretty good job of it. And I guess our next that segues into the CI/CD part. Nuwan, I think we can do a. I can show them how like TestChimp can be triggered through a typical CI/CD pipeline, and then we can maybe go into some Q&As. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome, cool. So I am just going to show you guys how simple it is. Let me like share my screen. Nuwan, you might have to
Oh yeah,
stop
sorry.
sharing for a second. Yeah, it's all good. Yep. All right, let me just pull that up. Right. So, I mean, this is your, typical CI/CD pipeline with your CI build and deploy steps. So where we see, TestChimp working here is like definitely starting in a staging environment, right? After the, blue-green deployment is complete. So for example, let me just show you, this is, yeah, let me just show you an example of how we have integrated TestChimp, right? So it's pretty straightforward, and DevOps teams can simply like get started with it right away, right? So after you have deployed your solution and you have done some basic validation tests, all your smoke screen tests and whatnot, with GitHub Actions, we just added a very simple step, right, which requires the deployment to be run, and then we all we have to do is just do a curl request to your TestChimp API, and you need to pass some headers which are specific to your org. And then what we do is, let me like expand this a bit.
Yeah, so
No
basically
one,
you can
you're
just
going to need to give me a new, yeah.
yes.
Yes.
So basically, whatever all of the things that I input in the UI, in the when we did the exploration about like the prompt, the test credentials, the URL, etc. Everything can be passed from the API that we export. So from your CI/CD pipeline, you can just directly pass that onto our API and then trigger it from your CI/CD pipeline. To basically, it's the equivalent of saying when you do a release, like go ahead and no, it's like triggering a manual tester to like explore and find bugs and report back kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly right. So you just, it's as simple as, like providing your UI, and also the flexibility, right? Like you don't have to be rigid in like how you specify the test, right? So you can simply say something as straightforward as sign up flow, and the agent is basically going to understand that, hey, this guy wants me to, figure out how the sign up process works, and it's going to go ahead and write all those test cases and all those flows like Nuwan just showed you. And you also have the option to provide some test data, right? In this case, we just use random emails and passwords, so it can go ahead and do all that good stuff. And your tokens, right? So you do have credits for each exploration, and here we're able to control that, and also the journeys, right? The flows that the agent can run within that specific scenario. So it's really quite straightforward. Basically, instead of the console, you just run a request, and you're actually going to get back a link to that exploration. So you can integrate that within your GitHub tickets and whatnot, and everything is just audited in a single place, right? Even within the PR,
Yeah, then you can
the pull request. Yeah.
yeah, and you'd probably like just go ahead and
Yes, no.
like check what the bugs that was found, and then do a like a sanity check on whether they are false positives or not. And then that's I think something to be mindful of
Exactly.
LLMs. Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. So like on PRs, we can add an integration that basically tells them like, hey, the agent has run, identified some issues. Check this link. Or we do have like Jira integration as well, right? So it can open tickets.
yeah, yeah. So all of the bugs that is found, you can export into Jira. Uh, and import Jira tickets as well. So, for instance, you can use that. So, one of the areas where we use that is like you import the Jira ticket, and then you'd have your user stories. But if you give a user story to ChatGPT, for instance, right, it does not have that mind map about your product, so it will generate fairly generic answers, as opposed to
Yes.
the difference of like asking someone in your team to write the test cases and then the user story descriptions. That difference comes possible with the mind map in picture.
Yeah. Absolutely right. And then yeah, so we have the integration with Jira, and then we also do have a Figma. So could you like touch maybe very briefly on how like
Yeah.
the
So
integration with Figma adds value? Yeah.
yeah, so the mind map, what it works on is the current state of your app, right? So it works through your current app, and the future state of the app is usually in a design somewhere in Figma, usually or might.
Absolutely.
So what we want to do is like you can integrate your Figma designs. So then our context window has the understanding of how your app looks like now and how it's going to look like next, and then use that. So for instance, imagine writing user stories for your next sprint, which only has designs. So you can bring in your Figma designs plus the mind map, and and ask to test him to flesh out a user story. So it'll know like this
Yep.
screen changed from this state to that new UI, and then reason on top of that and write the descriptions and so on.
Oh wow, that is fantastic. So we're shifting QA right to the design phase itself, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, so yeah, it's basically like shift left um, in a way where because a lot of the test scenario planning stage I think occurs even before the development happens. So that's where I think an
Yep.
integration with Figma would be quite useful.
That is beautiful. Fantastic. And also, what are the cool things you can do with this Chrome extension, by the way?
Yeah. So let me actually quickly show. So the idea behind
You stop sharing.
yeah, the idea behind the Chrome extension was that, again, going back to the example of cursor, um, what we want to do is, can we
Yeah.
have an AI assistant on your side while you're testing? So while you're coding, you have cursor on the side, and similarly, with the extension, we we want to bring AI capabilities to while you're testing, because the testing happens on the way on your browser, and you'll be on the site doing stuff.
Hmm.
And one of the cool things that we just added was like, so you can see there's a dev tab. We have connectivity with VS
Yep.
Code. We have an MCP as well. Way too much data to go into right now, but basically, this allows you to like write code on the web app itself. So, for instance, you can say stuff like this. They should move to right or something like that. And if this was connected, so we have a VS Code extension, and the Chrome extension talks to that to basically create a prompt
Okay.
that captures that entire visual context and gives it to your cursor so that it can implement
Hmm.
that. And then, so
All
all
right.
of the bugs that it found through explorations, it will show all of that that is relevant for the current page that you're on. Um, because it knows this is the screen that you're on, so it can find, okay, these are the bugs. So you'll have all of that checklist available for you. And
All right. So as you actually code it, right, and you do it in a test environment, you can like go ahead and do the fixes right on your VS Code.
exactly, yeah. So for instance, you can say like once the VS Code is connected, you can just say like fix this bug, and it will communicate to the your VS Code extension and get it fixed. And also bring in
Wow.
AI
Okay.
capability to this screen. For instance, one very recent request that we got from another client was that they wanted to do visual regression. So so when the explorer goes through the site, it captures the screenshots, right? And then we remember those screenshots in the mind map. And what we do here now is that you did a bunch of changes to this page. You would want to make sure that it is in alignment with the previous screen, and nothing is, whether you missed out something. So for instance, if you look at this, it says
Hmm.
missing shift calendar icon, because you can see over
Okay.
here the icon is missing. Now if you go to um, the previous exploration that we did, um, so you can see over here there's this icon
Oh
before the
wow.
shift calendar,
Oh yeah, yeah. So that
but in the
that
local
context, right? So it remembered that there was supposed to be an
an icon,
icon,
yeah.
over there, and now it isn't. Okay, look
Yeah,
at
so
that,
for
right?
instance, we in the local development just like show this capability, like remove the icon, and what it did was like, it identified, okay, so that was the base image that we got from the exploration, And what it did was like do a visual regression of this is the previous image and this is the current image. What's the difference? So some of those may be like expected ones. So maybe you intended to remove the icon, maybe you did not. So irrespective, it would show okay, these are the differences that was found, so you can address them. And usually again, this is something that is typically quite manual labor intensive. Um, sorry, I'm showing the wrong page. So over here, you can go through and say like, okay, this is not a bug. This is I intended to like remove this icon or
Oh,
whatever.
fantastic. Yeah.
And usually, so the prior solution was like people would use like pixel based comparisons. But the problem with that is like a lot of content is dynamic. So for instance, look at this calendar view. So you'd have like different calendar items on it, and a base image would have different calendar items, obviously. And a diff on that
Yes.
would say like whole bunch of false positives. But an LLM looking at it is basically can understand, okay, this is a calendar view. So the elements, the exact appointments would change, but if it would remove that noise and like
Yep.
focus on the structural differences. So that's where another area where LLMs can become quite handy.
That is so powerful. Yeah, absolutely. Like understanding what it's like how it's supposed to be, and differentiating between false positives, different, like the little things, right? Like you said, the slots, identifying that these are just time slots and these are not any bug or
Yeah.
issue. That
Yeah,
just
so for instance, it didn't
that
highlight
that's
that
very
the
powerful.
date string is different. So because the dates can change, it's a dynamic thing. And if you were to like do a dumb comparison of two images, it would say a lot of bad stuff, a lot of like false
Yeah.
positives. An LLM can reason quite effectively. So that's something we. So again, the mental mind model is that an AI that sits by your side is the Chrome extension to bring that AI assistance to like QA workflows.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So that's even before you. So this basically, like TestChimp basically allows you to not only like explore your application once it's up and running, and once it's uh, like once a typical user testing is done, but it allows you to shift basically your QA to the left, and at the point of development quickly identify any issues really
Yeah,
early on, and potentially like, and the time savings must be like massive. And I think we can like we're definitely going to cover some of the typical wins that you have seen, that you would typically see in the clients who have adopted this in
yeah. I think
a
it's
few
mostly
minutes.
around like
Yeah.
manual test savings, and I think there's two parts. That one is that people who have QA, they don't have to hire more testers. And the second part is some of the teams they don't have the option of having QA because of not enough money to pay. So what they would do is
Yep.
like they just have the developers and then they just ship and like hope things don't go bad. So
Exactly.
those it's basically savings comes from like the brand value that they protect, and then the product being in a good state, and avoiding the user churn and so on. So yeah, two buckets basically. Like one is that the user churn that you save from like having a good product, and the second is from cost savings from not having to hire too many QA engineers.
Exactly, right. And like, especially when you're a startup, in especially when you're scaling, it's a lot of decisions go behind how we preserve the runway, and at the same time how do we still give our customers the best experience, right? And
Yeah.
TestChimp, I think, using TestChimp, it basically allows you to have the best of both worlds, where you don't have to invest extensively in full-time hires, but it does the job and it does it well. So you're not compromising, you're just boosting. So that is very good news for startups and scale ups. I guess Jagat has asked like the typical what's the typical aha moment users get when they first try TestChimp?
Yeah, I guess the first one is like we always try to like push them to like do the explorations. And the first aha moment is like when you enter URL and then it like explodes on its own, and then sends them an email saying here are the 15 different bugs we found on your site. And often it's like things that they didn't even like consider doing, like changing the viewports and seeing whether it looks great on mobile and so on. So yeah, I think that would be the aha moment.
Okay, absolutely. And I think we have a security expert who has also jumped. There's another question like, are there any security considerations TestChimp has, taken into account when doing this agentic test suites? Like it'll be extracting some data, right? Like in DOMs and stuff like that. So like, how does I think the question is like, how does TestChimp ensure security of customer information on a high? I think that's the gist of it.
Yeah, so we have two offerings. One is the public cloud version, and the other is an in-house deployment. So for folks who are like want data isolation, basically we provide the option of like hosting everything on their side. The second answer is that so our agent runs on our cloud servers, and sometimes it's not accessible. Like your staging environment will be like behind firewalls. That's one instance, and the other is like you may be doing local host development, and you might want the agent to run on local host. So obviously, then the cloud cannot access them. So we have a local agent, a Python service that you can pip
Hmm.
install on your machine, and it can connect to your browser via CDP and explore from your browser itself. So in that way, the whole agentic exploration happens in your machine. But of course, the data, the bugs that is found and all of that gets synced back to our cloud if you're on the public cloud version. But if you're on the in-house deployment, then everything will be in your network.
Oh, fantastic. All right. So like, if you have any like customers with compliance um, requirements, like you do have that flexibility of how you approach it. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Is that the same
Fantastic.
question what Chirant has
All right,
asked?
and we Chiranta. Oh yeah. So Chiranta has asked like, can you describe how TestChimp scales when managing multiple tenants or distributed projects in cloud native set? Oh, so this is a typical DevOps engineer. Okay. So like, can you share with us like how your infrastructure works? I guess it's a bit of a cloud technical question. Do you want to take that, Nuwan?
Yeah, so I think this is
Oh,
more around like how
yeah.
TestChimp is implemented, right? TestChimp scales when managing multiple
Yeah,
tenants.
on an infra level, I guess. Scaling.
Yeah,
Can we answer this? Yeah.
yeah. Again, I think that the same answer goes for that as well.
Yeah.
We have like data isolation requirements usually handled by in-house deployment. And in public cloud, of course, they have like data isolation in terms of like each project gets their own account, and it's like data is not shared between like different teams.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I guess the gist of his questions is like especially around the multi-tenancy, right? So especially the isolation. So yeah, thanks, Jaron. It's pretty good question over there. Awesome. All right, and we do have a question. I think we have a couple more, Nuwan. We good with that? Just a couple
Yeah,
more
sure. Go
questions.
ahead.
I think we should be able to wrap it up, right? Awesome. I think it was Sampath over here. So how do you explain the ROI of this solution?
Yeah,
So like, I guess, yeah.
yeah.
Over to you.
So basically, how we approach the ROI is like how many additional QA engineers you would need to hire to handle, you know, all of that TestChimp does. Going through, if you the more screens that you have to think of like how many different combinations you need to test. Like you would like need to look at it on the mobile, you can look at it in a tablet, a widescreen, a desktop, and in each of those you have, like, let's say you have 10 different visual elements. For each of those you need to do like a whole bunch of testing on like negative test cases, positive test cases. If you have a search bar, for instance, what happens when you enter nothing and press search, and so on. A whole lot of smaller scale tests, but of large volume needs to be done. So
Hmm.
our estimate is like for usually a small to mid size company, a team, it would take around 2 to 3 QA engineers work that we would be able to take up. When I say take up, what I mean is that the existing QA engineers can focus on the more serious business logic kind of stuff, and then
Exactly.
the test team can take a look at this other stuff, which is, let's say, 5K each. That's 10K roughly of expenditure that you would need to spend if
Yep.
you were to do it manually versus testing, we charge like $500. So yeah, an ROI of like 20x is where we see that math going.
That is quite valuable. Yeah, and fantastic. We do have one more question. Let me pick one, and this is from again. We have another new one, and he's asking. Okay, I think you might have touched on this, but I think we can answer this briefly again. So, how is this different from using Cypress or Playwright? I think we did cover it, but you want to take that?
Yeah, I think we don't replace that. Again, the gist of it is that Playwright, Cypress, all of them are scripted solutions for like functionality verification, and scripts are basically following exactly the same steps every time and making sure that flow works. Whereas exploratory testing is basically thinking on its feet and then creatively exploring and identifying bugs that you didn't know existed. And in scripted world, you need to know the bug beforehand for which you are writing the script.
Fantastic. And then, yeah, I think we can end with the last question because it was anyway going to be a segue to the last bit.
Yeah.
So, good morning. Thanks for this is from Nanda Kumar. Thanks for the brilliant presentation. Can you guide me on what's the best way to explore TestChimp as a beginner? So, Nuwan, I guess you can take this opportunity to share with everybody here, like about maybe the trial version, like how they can get started right away and start
Yeah.
playing with
So
it. Let me stop.
yeah. So for sure, we used to have a sign up button where everybody can just sign up and go ahead. And what happened was like there was some malicious usages coming from there. And like a couple of weeks back, I think
Okay,
I posted on LinkedIn as well, because there was this someone who was like creating accounts, and I would like deactivate those.
I
And,
did read that. I did
yeah,
read that post, and
it
then
was
yeah,
fun. It
yeah.
was fun to get so much
That's funny. It was
attention.
funny. Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so what we did was like we hit the sign up link, but they still remember it and like came directly and did it. So what we now have is a slightly different process where you can request a free trial, and if you go to like get access, um, can you click on like get access at the top right? Yeah, and you can just fill the details and send us a mail. And this is just to like filter out all the throwaway email addresses that people use to sign up. But we usually just, if you reach out to us, we would set up an account. So we create a unique account code for you, and then we email you, and then you can use that to because in the sign up process we'll ask for that sign up code, and then you give the sign up code, and then you can register.
Beautiful.
So it's quite straightforward,
Fantastic.
and we have a 30-day free trial, and all you need to do to like see how it works is like give a web URL and any test credentials, and then you can go and explore and give you the results, and then you can take it from there.
Fantastic. And we see some quite a few big names over here. So congrats, Nuwan, on this awesome growth and your achievements so far with this. So yeah, guys, you definitely can try this out. Nanda, it's Nanda Kumar, right? Yep, Nanda Kumar Sampath. So definitely um, TestChimp does provide a 30-day free trial. You can go ahead and get access by clicking here. And to get started, you guys have pretty good documentation, right, on how to use the TestChimp that
Yeah.
suits your purpose best, right? Definitely have a look.
And of course, you can
And
reach out
yeah,
directly as
so
well.
this
Yeah.
yes, and also you can reach out to us on LinkedIn. So Nuwan is there on LinkedIn as Nuwan Samarasekera, and myself, Tuan. If you need help with integrating this in your DevOps pipelines, we'll be happy to help. So I'm Tuan Osman on LinkedIn. So that's fantastic. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And thank you so much, Nuwan, for your time. I know you're really busy. Thanks for taking the time to share this with us. And any last words, Nuwan, before
No,
we
I think it was
wrap
great,
this up?
and thanks a lot, Tuan, for the invite. Super excited to collaborate with you guys as well in the future.
Yep, yep. And for those of you who are still with us, I know we have taken a bit more time. We are basically like partnering with TestChimp. So we do like DevOps as a subscription, right? Where we take care of your DevOps on a monthly basis, and we will be providing the access to TestChimp completely on a discount or free of charge in our partner ops or DevOps as a service offering as well. Just FYI, so you can just drop us a message if you're interested, right? Awesome, everyone. So thank you so much for joining, everybody, and thank you so much, Nuwan, for your time. And hopefully, this will be the first of many where we can, talk about these even more features, right? That we have. I think today we covered just the agentic part of it, but TestChimp is much more about that. So looking forward to exploring those as well. No pun intended.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Tuan. See you then.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day, and thank you, everybody. Bye.